I think the developer gods watched my last video because after mentioning how much I love torch fights, we've been blessed with an absolutely amazing follower torch. This is not a joke, people. This torch is actually viable as a weapon. I mean, it does decent damage and its weapon skill is basically fire breathing. Come on now. Man, I had some fun with that. I even got a riposte with it. We were in the Namco Bandai offices at this point, and I may have yelled fairly loudly when this happened, just being honest, but I think you'll agree it was justified because that was amazing. So obviously this is footage from a preview event I went to last week in London. Thanks to Gareth for inviting me down. It was me, some Bandai Namco employees and another uploader called PvP Skills. It was good to meet all of them, but what we were doing is recording this new arena, which will be released with the upcoming Ashes of Ariandel DLC, I believe on October the 25th. There's no story stuff or spoilers like that in this footage. We're just looking specifically at the new PvP arena, that's all we were shown, and some new weapons and spells. Oh, and some armor possibly, but I was told I could show everything except the PS4 main menus, but I decided to not include item descriptions because I know a lot of people like to figure those out by themselves or piece together the story, so yeah, that's fine. Now, first things first, I suppose this is the most significant update for PvP to this game so far. If you want my real thoughts, I think an arena should have been in the game from day one. I think I even said that when Dark Souls 3 first came out, but you know, would've, could've, should've. It's here now and that's what matters, I guess. So if you played Dark Souls 1 or Dark Souls 2, you'll know there was PvP arenas in those games. However, there's going to be some slight differences between all three of them. So for this one, there's 1v1 duel fights, which don't allow Estus healing. I bet that's music to everyone's ears. Then there's team-based fights, which only let you have one Estus when you start. When you kill someone, you might get another Estus as well. Not 100% sure on that. And then, of course, there's the mad free-for-alls. Every man for himself type thing. I'm pretty sure I have footage of all of them. We even managed to get some 6-way free-for-alls. Actually, perhaps it was 3v3 teams, battles, I don't know, but either way, this is the chaotic, adrenaline-filled battles that I personally love. We've all tried to replicate this as best we can, haven't we? I mean, with things like organised fight clubs and the mini-games we organise and stuff like that in the base game. But at the end of the day, the way it is now is just a pain to set up, and if the host dies, it's all over. That's at least one of the reasons I think why an arena is so good for PvP. It allows big group events, more serious duels with no healing. People can now represent their favourite covenants in this arena because your covenant allegiance will determine your phantom colour, I believe. Actually, you might even be able to change to human form and stuff like that with the, with the rings. So this particular arena that they showed us in this kind of preview event is from the final area of the game. The Kiln of the First Flame, you can tell by the kind of way it looks. But the menus indicated, I think, that there's going to be other arena areas to choose from in the future. But I actually quite like this particular arena's layout. I mean, there was some verticality to it. The ground was quite uneven, which I've seen some people point out, but honestly, I just don't remember that being an issue. I guess the thing you could say is maybe this arena was more for the big team battles. It seemed fairly sizable. I mean, maybe for 1v1 duels you'd want slightly smaller arenas. I should just clarify as well that, yeah, this is not the final build. It's still being worked on, and also that the characters we were given to use were a bit bizarre, really. I mean, they were debug template characters, I think. I mean, mine had 20 vigor, which would obviously not be ideal for PvP normally. But the point was just to get an initial idea of what this new arena mode would be like. Now, before I talk a bit about the new weapons, you might also want to be aware that there will be a significant patch to the game when this DLC comes out. Do you know what? I'll actually put the patch notes in the description if I can, because they're changing a lot of stuff, possibly even including weapon animations and hyper armor changes. Yeah, big things, which will hopefully make the game more enjoyable. Alright, now the weapons. Let's start with the big ones. We didn't have access to all the new weapons and spells, of course. I don't actually know how many there will be. But finally we have some strength weapons with outrageous weapon skills. I love weapons with fun attacks. I think that's something Dark Souls 1 did really well. Sure, they're often flamboyant or impractical and ridiculous, but if you can land, let's say, a double hammer earthquake attack, it feels incredible. And that's all you need, really. This is the Quakestone Hammer. Actually, I'm not going to really talk about the weapon requirements here either, because I feel like they could potentially change. But this is definitely a pure strength weapon. this thing is formidable. It has a great hammer moveset, of course, but its weapon skill is very reminiscent of the stone great axe in Dark Souls 1, if anyone remembers that. You slam your hammer into the ground and then rip it back out of the earth by attacking again. It's actually really fun to try this and to bait people in with the initial attack and then catch them with a follow-up. I do like how once you die in a team or a free-for-all match, you respawn again, obviously, because unlike a duel, these modes have a timer. But when you respawn back in, you emit a Wrath of the Gods type explosion, which damages nearby opponents. This actually seemed to work quite well to prevent spawn griefing, for lack of a better term. You know, it gave you a couple of seconds to repair yourself. Another strength weapon was the Earthseeker. This weapon had the most over-the-top weapon art out of all of them, I think. It's a great axe. I think it also might have had a faith requirement. Its weapon skill was called Earthen Wrath, and you slam the axe into the ground with a prayer, and that triggers massive shockwave pillars. This one was a new quality weapon called the Valorheart that I unfortunately didn't really try out that much, which was stupid in hindsight because I think this weapon is going to be a fan favourite for sure. It's a paired weapon with an amazing moveset. The shield has a shield bash kind of move, which is great for shield breaking, and the sword can do lunging, jumpy attacks, which are really great for chasing people down. It's one of those weapons where there just really isn't anything to complain about in terms of moveset. The Onyx Blade is a great sword, which had quite a lot of different requirements across the board, I think, stat-wise, but the weapon skill involves activating a dark buff on the blade. I didn't actually use this one much either, but it seemed pretty solid. Possibly the longest greatsword in the game now. The range did seem quite lengthy. Quills was an interesting one. It's a rapier and the weapon skill involved leaping into the air and then shooting out multiple throwing knives. There was actually a skeleton enemy, if I recall, in the catacombs that had a similar attack. You probably know the one I mean. But this weapon as a whole though had a good quick moveset, fairly short range of course, but great critical attack damage to make up for it. The follower Javelin. Now I love this weapon. It's a spear, right? But it has an amazing weapon art. You can use focus points to throw a copy of the Javelin at your opponent. It's quite good to interrupt people if they're in a particularly long animation, and the range is good, and let me tell you, the temptation to go for a no-scope is just too much. I definitely had a lot of fun with this weapon. Talons. Now these were a paired set of claw weapons that looked so badass. If you ever wanted to roleplay as Wolverine, the time has come. I don't think I had these upgraded, but they have a fist weapon moveset with the addition of some lethal jumping and lunging attacks. Another weapon in a similar situation is the Millwood Battle Axe. It seems like a standard battle axe moveset, but it does have a special dash move to get around quicker. It's basically, from what I can tell, the same as the Warcry art, but you sprint forwards a couple of meters before you buff yourself. Now, if we were to talk about spells, if I threatened to inflict frostbite on you, would you care? I'm assuming you'd say no. I wouldn't blame you. To be honest, frostbite really wasn't anything special previously. It did seem quite lacking as a status effect. But they do seem to be adding some new spells for sorcerers. This one is called Frozen Weapon, and it's a buff that imbues your weapon with frost. So now you can stop using the Irithal Straightsword. Coupled with that was Snap Freeze, which was an offensive spell, and you know kind of like how you have the Toxic Mist Pyromancy? This sorcery sends out a Frosty Mist, which inflicts frostbite if you stand in it for too long. But the thing we found out fairly quickly is that it actually works surprisingly quickly. It doesn't take that long for your frostbite meter to fill up. Then we found a miracle called Way of White Corona. The idea for this miracle was great. You throw out a spinning disc which slices through enemies, but then it returns to you like a boomerang and actually inflicts damage on the way back. I like this because it means it will be a miracle that rewards good spacing. If you can chuck it through someone and then position yourself behind them when it comes back, you can hit them twice, if you get what I mean. In practice though, the damage was awful, as you may have noticed. I think our builds weren't set up for it. I only had about 20 faith, and our talismans weren't upgraded at all. They better do more damage, because the spell itself is awesome. For pyromancy, we've got a new pyro glove actually. It's called the Pyromancer Parting Flame. Possibly when it's fully upgraded, it'll end up doing more damage for your pyromancy cast than the previous pyromancy glove we had. But in terms of the special weapon skill, I don't get it. We didn't upgrade it, bear in mind, so as I said, maybe it'll be better than what we had before, but its special skill says, release Store of Death Echoes to gain a modest dose of Estus. I thought it would regenerate my health, judging by the description. The only thing I can think of right now is that maybe it replenishes your Estus flasks, but because Estus is restricted in the arena, it didn't work. We'll find out though. Moving on, this pyromancy spell is one that was used by enemies in the Demon Ruins. It's called Floating Chaos, and it's amazing. You cast a fiery orb into the air, which in turn shoots out 3 or 4 fireballs at nearby targets. The tracking, sometimes at least, was actually surprisingly good. I gotta say, this spell might have been my favourite. I personally found it to be the most useful. I reckon it would be especially good in team battles, but maybe my opinion might change once we get our hands on it in the future. I definitely do think that we're going to have some community events when the arena drops. We could use a password to all match together and set certain rules maybe, like spears only, or I don't know, anything we want really. It's just going to be so convenient now to connect with friends and stuff. But I hope this will have given you an idea of what to expect. It's not long to wait now, of course, and aside from this, I'm actually really excited to try out the main DLC, the new areas and bosses and all that jazz. That's what you can expect to see on the channel soon, among other things, so feel free to subscribe if that interests you, and otherwise I will see you in the next one.